Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. We are back to the top of our rotating topics. As a reminder for you newbies out there, we rotate between three different topics. First being estate planning of the rich and famous, second being cautionary tales, and third is we go over some sort of current trend, hot topic as it relates to the estate and elder law world. So today we are back to estate planning of the rich and famous, and we're going to be talking about Anna Nicole Smith. So for the youngins in the crowd, Anna Nicole Smith was a well-known model in the 1990s. She modeled for many, let's call them big name companies. According to a Forbes article, Anna met a gentleman by the name of J. Howard Marshall, and he was a billionaire with a B. And shortly after they met, they got married. They got married in 1994. The kicker here was that Mr. Marshall was 89 years old at the time of their marriage, and Anna was a little 26-year-old. Just 1 year after they got married, Marshall died. And he died without updating his last will and testament to include Anna. So Marshall had two sons, and we're going to call them Howard III and Pierce. It turns out that in his will, Marshall, the dad, had disinherited Howard III. So old Howard III and Anna teamed up to contest Marshall's will. And according to that same Forbes article, the local probate court in Texas found in favor of Marshall's will and agreed that the beneficiaries in his will were the appropriate beneficiaries of his estate. So to clarify, they ruled that Anna nor Howard III should get anything at all. So some thought things would stop there, and if they did, this would be the world's quickest estate planning of the rich and famous episode ever. But they didn't. Shortly after, Anna had filed for bankruptcy in California and claimed that Marshall's son Pierce, and he was the one that was still in Marshall's will. Anna claimed that Pierce, quote, interfered with her potential inheritance. Somehow, someway, the court agreed with Anna's argument and ruled in her favor for $474 million. So that, of course, got appealed because that's not chump change, right? And the Court of Appeals threw out the entire award, specifically claiming that bankruptcy court that had awarded her this money lacked jurisdiction in the case. So I won't bore you with the super legally details, but long story short, the case actually got appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, like the highest court of the land, because there was some scuttlebutt about whether the bankruptcy court had jurisdiction or not. So the U.S. Supreme Court, according to that Forbes article, said they'd only hear the case on specifically a small piece of the entire case. So what I mean by that is they were only going to hear the matter on a specific piece of law, and that is even who had jurisdiction in this case. So to clarify, that was a little confusing. It was not whether Anna should get a cut of the estate. It was merely for clarification on what prior decisions leading up to where they were at this point, what decisions stood up and which ones did not. So the Supreme Court in the case was Marshall v. Marshall, unanimously, which is really hard, unanimously decided that the bankruptcy court did have jurisdiction And therefore, in a way, you can say that Anna's side won. But remember, this was not about winning the estate case. This just allowed for Anna to continue the fight. But in just a totally insane twist of things, Marshall's son Pierce, the one that was in the will and was fighting against Anna, died. He died about a month after that Supreme Court decision. And then about 6 months later, Anna died. Anna died at the young age of 39. Holy cow. And don't you know that the fight did not die down there? Pierce's widow picked up the baton, and as did Anna's executor, he picked up the baton. So I imagine in my head like a boxing match, like round 2, ding ding, just different people, same case. In effort to not make this episode a million hours long, I'll just give you kind of the Cliff Notes version of what happened there from the court side of things. So the Supreme Court ended up sort of like reversing their decision in a way and basically said that the Court of Appeals decision, the one that was throwing out Anna's win, was right. Thereafter, Anna's estate, through her executor, of course, then went after Pierce's estate. You know, Pierce, the son that was still in the will. Anna's estate went after his estate. All of this according to that Forbes article. You know, now that I say that, I sort of wonder what happened to Howard III. Howard III was the one that kind of teamed up with Anna to contest the will. He's not really ever talked about. I don't know, maybe he gave up midway or something. Anyway, so the court threw this claim out. And basically, like a gnat buzzing around his head, the judge said, no, Anna's estate, you can't go after Pierce's estate. Crazy enough, through all of this, it's been the same probate judge the entire case, which is kind of loony to think about from my chair. Just a handful of years ago, specifically in 2017, the judge, which by the way, his name is Judge Mike Wood, he went off on the family. Here, I'm going to read a direct quote that he said on the record. He said, I am tired of this case. I've told you from the beginning. I beg you to recuse me. I don't want to deal with you people anymore. This is ridiculous. I am not going to spend a lot of time cutting at nits and gnats for people that are fighting over $20 billion. They didn't create this wealth. It was created by a third party and they're just fighting over it. They can't agree on anything. They can pay lots of lawyers. They can pay lawyers until hell freezes over. But they don't want to agree to anything. They just want to pay lawyers. Wow. Guess what? Just a week after that, he recused himself. Is that not the best mic drop moment ever? So since then, after he recused himself, a new judge has been hearing this case, and I'm sure that judge is playing the most not fun game of catch up ever. That, of course, has certainly delayed things. The estate planning disaster craziness, I don't know what to call it, somehow doesn't stop there. So we know how all this came about because Marshall had not updated his estate plan to include Anna, right? So one would think that Anna would have learned that valuable lesson. Well, she didn't. So when she passed away, as I referenced earlier, when she passed away at 39, her last will and testament was outdated too. So now let's talk about hers. According to an Elder Law Answers article, Anna, when she passed away, left a 5-month-old daughter named Danny Lynn. Though she, Anna, had a son named Daniel, that had predeceased her. Daniel actually died a very short period of time after Danny Lynn was born. So Anna's very outdated will left everything in a trust to Daniel. And I sort of thought this was like estate planning 101, but she never provided what would happen if Daniel predeceased her. According to a paper by Joanna Grossman, a professor, Anna's will surprisingly contained a provision specifically omitting future born or adopted children. So let's chat about that for 2 seconds. So children, they do not have an automatic legal right to be included in a parent's will. You hear me out there, kiddos? Though the law is pretty clear that children do have a right if there's sufficient proof that perhaps they were just inadvertently overlooked. Which that could be a whole episode of its own. I digress. Danny Lynn may get lucky because Daniel's trust failed since he had predeceased. So the estate will likely get distributed according to the state's intestacy laws. Now, we've talked about intestacy laws before in prior episodes, but just to remind, every state has a sort of default estate plan for its state citizens. So those intestacy laws are for people who die without a will, or maybe their will is held to be invalid, or maybe whatever's in the will fails, kind of like here in Anna. So that's where those intestacy laws may step in. At the time of all this going down, Annie's mother was still living. So there was discussion as to who would even inherit, her mother or Danny Lynn, her daughter. Most thought Danny Lynn would. P.S. We don't have time for it in this episode, but also since Anna had not updated her estate plan, she also did not provide who she would want to be Danny Lynn's legal guardian. So a legal guardian is in place for someone that may have minor children, and if they pass away, they can stipulate who they want to care for the child. So because she didn't stipulate that, there were multiple men that came forward to claim paternity over Danny Lynn. Towards the end, a fourth even came forward, and that was the frozen sperm of her former husband, Mr. Marshall. I can't even make this stuff up, guys. And we can all thank Professor Grossman for doing this wonderful research. This is such good stuff, right? So it was ultimately determined, after many headline-making stories, that a gentleman by the name of Larry Burkhead, who was a former boyfriend of Anna, was the father of Danny Lynn. Well, the paternity test results said Burkhead was 99.99% likely the father, at least. So that's what we're going with. Beyond all that, there was even this big legal fight over where Anna would be buried. So according to an article in People magazine, Anna's mother wanted Anna buried in Texas at a family plot they had there. Anna also had a friend that claimed Anna wanted to be buried next to her son, Daniel, who was buried in the Bahamas. Then Burkhead, Danny Lynn's biological father, former boyfriend, claimed she once said she wanted to be buried in California next to Marilyn Monroe. So, again, all these things should be in writing, people. Anyway, so Anna's friend must have won because she did end up getting buried in the Bahamas. That's according to Professor Grossman's paper. So, who will inherit from Anna's estate? And probably the much bigger question is, how much will that person or persons inherit? There are so many TBDs to be determined until Marshall's estate gets officially settled. Anna's estate is sort of in the shadows, waiting to see what, if anything, will flow through it from Marshall's estate. Danny Lynn will probably receive all or at least a heavy majority of anything flowing through Anna's estate. So let's quickly recap. Mr. Marshall died in 1995. Anna died in 2007. And here we are in 2021 and things still aren't settled. Got it. Okay. Well, friends, hashtag do your estate plan and keep it updated. So next week's topic is a cautionary tale, a real life case I've personally worked on. You know, this isn't like Anna Nicole Smith and her estate planning Looney Tunes. This isn't any fancy celebrity estate planning. Cautionary tales are people like you and I, families like yours and mine, and they're called cautionary tales for a reason. Because don't let what happened to them happen to you. Until next time, Legal Tea listeners, talk soon.